Hey everybody, hey, welcome back to the 53206 cast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Meg.
And this is a podcast specifically designed to engage us in the process of rethinking our inner city spaces. Meg.
Yeah.
Meg, I am just wrapping up the final edits and final recording of the book Bad Neighborhoods.
Nice.
So yesterday I was over here where we record content. And I recorded the last chapter. I also recorded the second to last chapter, and I didn't like it. So I'm going to change it a little bit.
I'm going to redo it. Keep working. Keep tinkering.
Yep. But if you like this podcast and you are interested in this type of content, that book is also something that you might find interesting. And it can be found on the Bad Neighborhoods podcast feed. It's put up for free as a podcast, which means that you can access all of that information for free, basically. So you don't even need an Audible account.
Oh my gosh.
You don't have to use one of your tokens or credit.
Credits, yeah.
Yeah, you don't even need to use a credit. It's all there. It's all free. It is on a podcast feed, but it is technically an audio book.
Yeah. And I keep getting people reaching out that they really are liking it. So I don't know if you're getting that, but I'm getting people are telling me.
Yeah, here and there. Yeah, which is always nice. I always appreciate that. Yeah, and if you do listen to it and you like it, feel free to tell somebody.
Tell a friend.
It's not a secret.
Yeah, tell a friend.
But Meg, today you wanted to talk about something different, not the book.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about something different. And did you want to share?
Yeah. So I mean,
you want to share
this podcast? It's a lot of things that we're grappling with, or we're trying to figure stuff out. And so I feel like this comes from a situation that happened like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, at the kids' school. So we got, I feel like listeners who are also parents probably get emails, texts, voicemails about stuff that happens at their kids' school. And so something happened the other day at our kids' school, and we got a voicemail, a text, and an email saying that there was,
very thorough.
They're they want to get a hold of us, and they do. And so they, it was just like, check your email. And the email said, there was a situation that happened at school, and, we just want to make sure that your kid's safety is our utmost important, that kind of email. So I was like, oh, what happened?
Sure.
And so I asked May, because I would assume like middle school, high school, they're all on one floor. And I'm like, May is going to know what's going on. May was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. And so
I was going to say, she's awesome, but I don't know that she would be the one to know what was going on.
Yeah. That's probably true. So then I asked Dex, and I was like, did something happen, on your guys' floor? Like, did you, what happened? And he was like, oh yeah, there was a huge fight in my, with my two classmates. And so he kind of told me all about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that sounds intense, and I told you about it, and you kind of followed up with them. And then we followed up with him again at dinner, just like, how did you feel? Like all of those kinds of things. And he didn't really have a lot of feelings towards it. So then I get I get some Facebook messages from some of the other parents. And so we're all kind of discussing the situation that happened in the kids' class. And I don't, like, none of them said anything wrong. None of them said anything, I'm not throwing them under the bus at all. But they said that their kids were really scared and they didn't like that. And it just made me think, like, okay, yes, I agree that our kids' safety is very important. But I also agree that, especially in Milwaukee Public Schools, there's different socioeconomic levels, there's different races, there's just a lot of different moving parts. And it just made me kind of think one more time that every kid's education is just as important as my kid's education. And I feel like when we throw in fear into the conversation, things change. Like, things change if we're like, well, our kid's safety is the most important thing. Again, I agree that, like, I want my kid to be safe, but I also just kind of feel like we're on the edge of, are we throwing other kids out of school? Are we suspending other kids unnecessarily? I just feel like it's a slippery slope, and I feel like as an educator and as a parent, you might have some thoughts on it.
Well, sure. I mean, when I was an administrator, that was always something that you had to keep in mind, was what is like the parent response going to be.
Yeah.
And, so when you put those communications out, you have to be super vague. You can't say kid X threw a chair at kid Y or something. You can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, it does elicit some fear. And then, there's always a spectrum of responses from parents. Sometimes you get a parent, parents that would respond to like you and I would, like, oh, okay, well, it's like 6th grade boys.
Yeah.
I remember being a 6th grade boy, and I feel like there was a fight in the locker room like every week. Somebody was punching someone else or whatever. So, and in my career, I've probably broken up because I was thinking about this because Dex was talking about how the fight was broken up. And, I was thinking like, well, I've at least broken up 5 fights a year.
Okay.
And I think I worked in schools for 15 years. So I'm probably like 75 fights that I've
and I do
been
have
a
to
part
say,
of.
I was just talking with I was just talking about this yesterday, that I broke up a fight at cross country. And it just started so quickly that I was like, did that just happen?
Sure.
And, because kids were just messing around, and all of a sudden then they were like on the ground, like punching each
Sure,
other.
you start play fighting, and then all of a sudden somebody gets hurt.
Which was really funny, because Ava was like, oh, they were like, because the kid was at this basketball game we went to, and I was like, oh, I broke up a fight with that kid. And she was like, and I was like, and she's like, how did it happen? And I was like, they were play fighting. And then they, and Ava was like, that's exactly what Alex says.
Right. Which is why we got this. We have a no play fighting rule, because
you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen, but sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it. So, but Meg, yeah, you're right. Like, well, anytime there's a big disruption at a school, it's unknown. You can throw out the word scary, but really it's because, kids just aren't used to that happening, right?
Yeah.
They're used to like this very specific routine, and it's quiet, and it's supposed to be calm, and they're supposed to be absorbing this information the teacher throws out to us.
Conducive of learning.
Sure. But I mean, a school is just a little microcosm of the neighborhood or the community that makes up the school.
Yeah.
And so, if there are fights out in the community, you should expect there to be fights in the school. Just like if people are super nice to each other in the community, you should expect that to also take place in the school. And, a lot of times with a kid, when they're shocked or they see something that they're not used to, like, well, it's scary to them, right? Because they don't know what's going to happen next, right? But Meg, I think the way that you were kind of heading with this is something that I have noticed also, and from being an administrator for a long time, that the fear element, like in some ways will push somebody, like when someone is afraid, it's almost like the regular societal norms that exist can be tossed out the window a little bit, because like you said, safety is of the utmost importance. And this illusion of safety, I mean, kids, if those 2 kids that were fighting each other had done that 1 block away from the school building, nobody would have known, nobody would have cared. You wouldn't have gotten a phone call, email, voicemail. You wouldn't have gotten any of those things. So, I have seen in my life people, and I'm not, again, I don't, anytime we talk about something on the podcast, I'm not talking about one specific person. So if you're listening to this and you do this thing, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying I've noticed in general that as a group of people that comprise the Metro Milwaukee area, and I'm assuming it's similar in other areas, that we use the illusion, or even in some cases the real life feeling of being afraid as a reason to avoid something, or unnecessarily maybe consequence someone, or put these things in place that separate ourselves from these things that we're afraid of. Meg, we started this episode by talking about the book. One of the chapters in the book is called Are You Afraid?, which is the number one question that people ask me about living here is, are you afraid of the neighborhood? And when I hear that question, I don't think that the person asking it is asking because they're afraid of the person who lives 4 houses down from us. I think what they're asking that question and saying is, I've been told and conditioned that I'm supposed to fear this neighborhood. And, haven't you also been taught and conditioned to fear the same thing? And so, we are in a lot of ways taught that when something out of the ordinary happens, that you're supposed to be afraid of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, 6th grade boys getting mad at each other and then wanting to hit one another, it's not that uncommon, right? And it doesn't, I think a lot of times, and this is also in the book too, speaking of the book again, I worked at this elementary school, and this is where I kind of sort of realized this, like, first graders would hit each other all the time, and like you don't send them home, or like they're not as in trouble as like if a high schooler punched another high schooler in the face.
A first grader hitting somebody like isn't going to hurt.
Yeah, well, I mean, it hurts whatever. It's not like
like if a first grade boy hit me, and if a middle school boy hit me, and
Sure.
if a high school boy hit me,
that
they
would be
all
different.
have
Yes, that would be
very different impacts.
But like it's like way more common for kids on the playground to get into it when they're 6 or 7.
Okay.
And then they sort of start to wean their way off of it, and then
They can communicate more effectively.
Yeah, you don't need to just hit somebody because they wouldn't share their jump rope with you or something, right? And so, like, I mean, those things, it happens.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not. Particularly when your kid goes to a school where those things don't happen all of the time, like it is very normal to like react in a fear-based approach, to have your reaction be based in fear of, is this the new normal? Are we all going around and hitting each other now?
Yeah.
But I've never seen a good instance or I've never seen a good way of validating avoiding something because of fear and having that pay off in the long run. To me it just doesn't lead to the world that we want to create. Okay, so there's these 2 kids that got into it. Like, should we run away from those kids? Should we send them somewhere else? Like, and where would we even send them to?
I even asked Dex, I was like, tell me a little bit about these kids. And one of the kids, like it was his friend, like he's kind of known this kid for a while.
Sure.
But the other one just started at the school like 2 months ago.
Sure.
Or like a month ago. And I was like, well, where was he before that? Like, why was he moving? Why was he changing school? So like, I feel like unraveling it, and I'm like, well, like, no wonder, like, he's a new kid at school. Like, he just changed. Like, we don't know the circumstances. And so I feel like having a little, like, trying to have a little bit more of an empathetic lens. And okay, does this, I asked Dex, does this kid need a new friend? Does this kid like need like your leadership to like, you're one of the bigger kids in the class. How can our kids, like, have the empathetic lens and like help the culture of the school was what I asked. And I feel like as a parent, like, we need to help guide those types of conversations with our kids, because they're creating, they can be the change they want to see in the world just as easily as we can.
Sure. And I'm glad you said empathy and not sympathy. That was something that we would talk about a lot, working in schools, was that, if you're, okay, changing schools in the middle of the year is hard.
Yeah.
Usually it's not because something awesome happened and now you're like moving to this like significantly better situation. It's not great. Like most families wouldn't decide to move their kid in the middle of the school year if they had the choice, right? And so, if you're a kid that is just starting there, whatever, there's probably something. Yeah. So there's probably something more to that story other than we moved.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in a Milwaukee public school where you get a choice.
Yeah.
Where you can attend. So, with all that being said, like if you just looked at that situation and you said, well, that kid obviously has something going on. And so basically, like, it's okay that it's okay that these 2 kids decided that they wanted to hit each other, whatever. That is, when you look at it with just sympathy, there's never any action tied to it. There isn't ever any, like, because empathy is in a lot of ways a call to action.
Yeah.
I feel I have these feelings, it could be because I put myself in the position of the other person, and then that calls me to some sort of action, whether it's just like be the kid's friend, stand up for him a little bit if that's something that you see, that could be helpful. But then when you take it to the neighborhood perspective, like if you just looked at the poorest part of Wisconsin and you just had sympathy for everyone, like that doesn't do anything.
That doesn't make a change.
It doesn't make anything any better. Very few people love. I mean, there are some people who will just blabber on about their problems endlessly, and they're looking for your sympathy. I mean, you can find that here or you can find that anywhere.
Yeah.
But the big difference between those two, sympathy and empathy, is that empathy, it gives you ideas.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts something on your heart or in your head that says, okay, well, I could probably go try this, and this that might make this better. Or, okay, our class is really sad now because this happened. Maybe I'll do this thing to try to make it a little better, whatever. Or maybe the teacher involved is going to be struggling for a day or two. Maybe I'll, I don't know what you give to a teacher, a box of candy or something. Or Anyways, but yeah, that's the big difference. But going back to fear, that I have seen over and over again, because I'll have these conversations with people about where we live, and there's always kind of this like cloud of like we should fear it. And that is the reason why people stay away.
Yeah.
It's the number one. I think the number one reason is because
we're trained to fear the inner city spaces, and so therefore we don't have any empathy, and we can't see that, we can't see things through an empathetic lens because we're fearful.
Yeah, and so if we're taught to fear the inner city, then in a lot of ways we're taught to fear anything that looks like what you believe the inner city to look like. So. If you are poor and black and you, in theory, could live in the inner city, in mass as a group of people, we're taught that we should be afraid of you. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the comments that you were getting, on Facebook or whatever. By the way, Facebook comments? Why, do people even write Facebook comments?
No, it was like a Facebook, like we were all like messaging each other.
Oh, you're like DMing each other?
Like, yeah, it was like a group
chat?
Group of moms. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay,
whatever. But where I was going with that is that we can use this illusion of fear to keep us away from places, and I feel pretty strongly that fear is like a predecessor, or it's like the prerequisite to either some kind of racist mindset or classist mindset or a combination of both. Because, if we tell ourselves that it's scary, then in a lot of ways...
It's like a free, out of jail free pass. Like we don't have to care. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to like press ourselves more for it.
Yeah. And, if we're all human beings, and self-preservation is something that we care about. And so if there's this thing that threatens our ability to preserve ourselves in the world, then we're going to push back on it. And even if the pushback is just to, avoid, to move as far away as possible, cross the street when you see somebody walking up to you on the sidewalk, that while you can justify it in your head, Meg, when I think about the course of the course throughout the course of history of racial reconciliation, 180 years ago, black people were enslaved, and then they weren't, and then they were discriminated against systematically for a very long time. And, while some of those things still exist today, they don't exist in the same way that they used to. But I think that fear, I think our neighborhood became the way it is because of fear. If you're looking to buy a house and, you see that one area has been redlined, that red line was an indicator that you should be afraid to buy a property there. Like you should be afraid to move there. Yeah. Either because it wasn't deemed a good investment or a good asset to hold on to, or because something bad will happen to you. I mean, even in doing some of the research for the book, you just hear story after story of how, one black family would move into a neighborhood and then like the whole neighborhood would flip out because of some fear that they had inside of their head, and then they made decisions based on fear. And Meg, I don't think it's ever a good idea to make a decision based on fear.
Well, and I want to say too, like when, as a mom with kids, like you want your kid to be safe. You want your kid to get the best. But I actually just heard something the other day. It was Donald Miller was talking about self-esteem, And so we had like these 3 levels of self-esteem. And so like the level 1 was like at the beginning, like when you're a kid, and I feel like we can, if you're a teen, you, so the first one was, the first level of self-esteem was you don't matter. Okay. So you kind of, as a kid, like you don't matter. The second one was I matter more than you.
Sure.
And so Donald Miller was kind of talking about like how a lot of times people get stuck in that one. And he said the third level is we all matter a lot.
Yeah.
And like, I think especially when we're like thinking about like our kids, like our kids don't matter any more than any other kids. If we want to provide a better society, we need our kids to, you know, go through bad stuff. And like, I'm not saying I want my kid to be harmed, but I feel like when we have that lens of I only am doing this because I want my kid to be safe, it's just a slippery slope of like, okay, well, what are you going to do next? Are you going to like move to a community that doesn't have any, it's again, I just feel like it's like, be careful when you start to feel that way, because I think things can just go wrong. And I feel like we've seen that.
Well, fear is a terrible motivator.
Yeah.
And it doesn't typically lead you to wherever you think it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you do something because you're afraid, I mean, you can be forced to comply into something because you're afraid of what will happen to you, and that's fine. You know, like pay your taxes or something.
Yeah.
Like I pay the taxes because I don't want to get audited or have the
Mm-hmm.
IRS come get me. But you know, of the other things where I have free will and free choice, you know, like I don't. If I was afraid, like let's say I was trying to buy another house, and you know I got really scared that it was going to be the only house that I was ever going to be able to buy again, and I way overpaid for it. Well, like you know, having fear and approaching the world with a fear-based mentality it's first of all, it's not good for you, and it's not good for any person or any situation that you're afraid of. And a lot of times if you can add empathy into it, well then it changes it from, you know, it changes it from I'm afraid to why, or maybe even better, like I'm afraid what happens if I don't do something positive and productive to make a situation like that happen less and less. You know? And we all have, you know, that's one of the things that was real important to me in the book was to never tell anybody what to do. Because, you know, I can know what I have the ability and capacity to do, but we've been married a long time, and I have maybe some suggestions for you, Meg, but I'm not you, and I don't know. I don't know what you, when you read about something or you hear about something, I don't know what you're called to go do. But I would, you know, even though I don't know what the specific thing is, I would encourage you, you know, if you do hear of something and you start to be afraid, to push into that, lean into that, and figure out, well, what should I actually be doing in this situation? Because simply being afraid isn't helpful.
I think like a great call to action for, you know, something that involves our kids is like to be more involved. I know that's helpful for me to be able to get to know more of the situation and get to know, you know, the kids in the situation, and be able to just being more involved, in my opinion, as a parent has been very helpful if I have any sort of hesitation or thoughts, you know, on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, Meg, do you have anything you'd like to plug? It's almost time to wrap up.
I mean, it is the giving season, so I'm just saying again, if you want to give to a nonprofit, that's always helpful this time of the year.
Do you have a nonprofit in mind?
You know, I have a pretty good one in mind. It's called We Got This.
Okay.
You can donate at
I've heard of it.
WeGotThisMKE.com and learn all about it.
All right. Well, you know what, Meg? Let's just throw this out there, too, because we kind of started a campaign. So We Got This is an entirely volunteer-run organization. The only adults that receive payment are the adult leaders on Saturday mornings.
Who are a group of incredible people. Great. Most of them live within the community, and they care so much. I know one of the ones, she was working at State Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I'm not going to be there next week. You know, I have State Fair. This is one of the Saturdays. And then she was there the next, she was there and
Sure.
she's like, I just couldn't miss it. I'm sorry. Like I told that other place that I couldn't work for them. And, you
Sure.
know, so I feel like all the people there, they literally come every week and they care so much about their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the reason why, the reason, honestly, why, you know, the only adults that are paid are the adult leaders is because we want as much of the money donated as possible to go directly to the kids.
Yeah.
Like 75% or higher.
Mm-hmm.
And we really want donors to feel confident that when they donate $20, it does go just directly to the kids. And so we got this to start a campaign looking for business partners, businesses or organizations that would like to pay for one of, or a portion of, one of the adult leaders for that come out on Saturday mornings. And so it costs the organization We Got This $1,500 per adult leader for the summer. So it's 12 Saturdays. And I think that there are enough people one of the things that I've learned about We Got This is there are a lot of people that love the mission. A lot of people that want to get behind the mission. It's attractive to people and that they want to be involved. We say it that they want to be the we in We Got This. And so I kind of think that there are 10 or so organizations or businesses that would like to sponsor one of those adults for the summer. And then that allows us to say, you know, the money that is raised does go directly to the kids. And so if you are a business or if you know a business or you work somewhere and you're like, oh, I always say Northwestern Mutual just because it's like one of the big businesses in Wisconsin. I don't know if anybody listening works in Northwestern Mutual. I don't really care. But that's just always the first one that comes to my mind. But, you know, if you were a person that works at a larger business and you have within your business, you know, these giving campaigns that I know that take place, and you want to nominate We Got This for one of those, you know, we would obviously really appreciate it. And we just wanted to make it clear, you know, okay, well, those business associated or the donations associated with the business, those are going to cover the adults. And then individual donors will cover the kids. Yeah. Which is super fun. Like, I kind of get why somebody, you know, either a listener or somebody that's, you know, friends with us on Facebook for the We Got This page would want to donate because it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to donate your $20 and then see some of the kids on Saturdays via Facebook or Instagram or all the other social medias. See the kids doing some cool stuff. So. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.